What could possibly compel a 65-year-old woman to leave behind the comfort of her peaceful, retired life and travel across the country for a 27-year-old man she'd never met in person? What would make her risk everything? Her money, her safety, even her life for a love that existed only in the digital world. Ella Mattis was a woman who believed in second chances. After spending years devoted to her family and career, she felt it was finally time to pursue her own happiness. Little did she know that what she thought would be a fresh start would spiral into a series of shocking events, ultimately leaving everyone around her questioning how such a tragedy could unfold. This is not just a tale of an online romance gone awry. It's a story about the hidden dangers of trust, the painful consequences of misplaced faith, and the lengths to which some people will go when desperation meets opportunity. As the layers of Ellen's journey unfold, one thing becomes abundantly clear. Ellen's path was never what it seemed. The man she trusted, Samson Allen, was not who she believed him to be. What truly transpired when Ellen stepped off that plane? What secrets lay behind the sweet messages, the affectionate phone calls, and the promises of a fresh start? And how did a dream of love spiral into a nightmare that no one could have predicted? The answers are as heartbreaking as they are chilling. But for now, the lingering question remains. How could something so beautiful turn into something so deadly? Welcome to Shocking Real-Life Crime Stories. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to my viewers, especially my subscribers, for your continued support as we bring you both familiar and untold true crime stories. Please, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Ellen Mattis had always been a woman of resilience and quiet strength. Born and raised in a small Minnesota town, her life was shaped by an unyielding determination and a deep sense of responsibility. As a young woman, she married her high school sweetheart, envisioning a future filled with love and stability. But those dreams were shattered when her husband, overwhelmed by the pressures of fatherhood and financial struggles, walked away from the family when their daughter, Samantha, was still a toddler. The betrayal left Ellen heartbroken, but it also fueled a determination to ensure that Samantha would have the life she deserved, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. Ellen worked tirelessly to provide for her daughter, juggling multiple jobs. By day, she worked as a receptionist, and by night, she picked up shifts at a local diner. Her days were long, and her nights even longer, but she never allowed Samantha to see the toll it took. Ellen was resolute. She was both mother and father, protector and provider. Years turned into decades, and Ellen's hard work began to bear fruit. Samantha grew into a bright, ambitious young woman, and Ellen secured a stable administrative job that allowed her to buy her first home. Life had finally settled into a steady rhythm, though it wasn't without its challenges. Yet, even as she watched her daughter thrive, Ellen couldn't ignore the loneliness that had crept into her own life. There had been no time for dating, no time for friendships, and certainly no time for herself. When Samantha moved away to pursue her own career, the quiet in Ellen's home became unbearable. Retirement, once a dream she eagerly anticipated, had become a double-edged sword. The days felt endless, and the structure she had relied on for so many years was now gone. She filled her time with hobbies she had long neglected, gardening, reading, and knitting, but the solitude remained, gnawing at the edges of her newfound freedom. It was around this time that Ellen ventured into the digital world, something she hadn't considered before. At her daughter's suggestion, Ellen created social media accounts to stay connected and joined online groups for retirees. What began innocently enough, sharing recipes, book recommendations, and stories of aging, soon became a source of comfort. The online conversations offered a sense of belonging, a way to connect with others who shared her experiences of finding purpose after retirement. In those online spaces, Ellen found something she hadn't realized she was searching for: attention. And it came from someone who seemed to understand her loneliness and desires, a young man named Samson Allen. They began communicating daily, sharing their lives and dreams, and Ellen felt herself drawn to him. He seemed kind, attentive, and, most importantly, understanding. Their conversations deepened over time, and Ellen believed she had found a connection that transcended the digital space. But what started as an innocent online friendship would soon unravel into a devastating truth, one that would change Ellen's life forever. What seemed like a fresh start would, instead, spiral into an emotional and physical nightmare, revealing the true danger behind a seemingly innocent digital relationship. Ellen's journey toward love, second chances, and happiness was marked by missteps, secrets, and an ultimate betrayal that no one could have foreseen. It wasn't long before Ellen found herself drifting into more personal conversations. One direct message here, a private chat there. Before she knew it, she was forming connections she hadn't expected. The attention was refreshing, and the feeling of being seen, something she hadn't experienced in years, was intoxicating. One day, she received a message that would change everything. It came from Samson Allen, a 27-year-old man from Mississippi. The message was simple at first, almost casual. Samson reached out in an online chat group for retirees, responding to a comment Ellen had made about finding joy in life's simple pleasures. His words were light and thoughtful, carrying a charm that immediately caught her attention. "You've got away with words, Miss Ellen. I could learn a lot from someone like you." Ellen hesitated at first. Who was this young man, and why would someone his age be interested in talking to a woman like her? The skepticism lingered at the back of her mind, but Samson's friendly tone and easygoing humor disarmed her. Over the course of a few messages, what began as a simple exchange turned into a nightly routine. By the end of their first week of chatting, Samson had her laughing like she hadn't in years. He was everything Ellen didn't know she was looking for: charming, funny, and attentive. He asked about her day, remembered little details about her life, and made her feel lighter in a way she hadn't in a long time. At first, Ellen remained cautious. The age gap was undeniable, and she was aware of how unusual their connection might seem to others. But Samson had a way of easing her concerns. He told her age was just a number and how much he admired her wisdom and strength. Over time, her skepticism faded, replaced by a warmth and excitement she hadn't felt in decades. Samson's charm felt effortless, and he knew just how to make her feel seen and valued. He asked her about gardening, a hobby she loved, and in one conversation, he said, "You said you liked gardening. Do you ever grow sunflowers? I hear they're a lot like you, strong, bright, and hard to miss." For Ellen, these interactions became a lifeline. Samson's words made her feel youthful, vibrant, and cherished. He complimented her intelligence, admired her resilience, and spoke of how much he respected women like her, those who had weathered life's storms with grace. Slowly, the wall she had built around herself began to crumble. Her initial skepticism was replaced by a growing affection. Samson's attention filled a void she hadn't even realized was there. He didn't just make her laugh. He made her feel important. For the first time in years, Ellen felt like someone truly cared about her as a person, not just as a mother or retiree. The age difference began to fade into the background. In Ellen's eyes, Samson seemed wise beyond his years, a kindred spirit who appreciated the beauty in her that others often overlooked. But behind Samson's charm, there was a darker truth. His interest in Ellen was not born out of genuine affection, but rather a calculated strategy. Samson Allen was not just a charismatic young man seeking connection. He was part of a loosely organized group in his Mississippi neighborhood that targeted vulnerable individuals online. His charm, combined with his ability to empathize, made him a natural at this cruel game. Samson's journey into the world of online scams began years earlier. Growing up in a low-income community, he had witnessed struggle at every turn. His father, Bernard Allen, worked long hours at a local factory but could barely make ends meet. Like many of his peers, Samson dreamed of escaping the cycle of poverty, but opportunities seemed scarce. Frustration led him down a path that he would later justify as survival. It all started small. A neighbor introduced Samson to the idea of creating fake profiles to solicit money from people on dating sites. "You just have to tell them what they want to hear," the neighbor had said. At first, Samson hesitated, unsure of the idea. But after his first successful attempt, which earned him enough money to cover his bills for months. He was hooked. The thrill of earning money so easily outweighed any moral dilemma he may have had. It became a game to him, and he quickly grew more sophisticated in his approach, using charm and empathy to manipulate vulnerable people. Ellen, unknowingly, was now one of his targets. What began as innocent online chats quickly evolved into something darker. Samson's ability to make her feel seen and valued was a key part of his strategy. He knew how to play on her emotions, how to make her feel special, while slowly weaving a web of deception. As Ellen's feelings for him deepened, she couldn't have known that Samson's attentions were just the beginning of a tragic series of events that would change her life forever. The man she thought she had connected with was not who he seemed, and the truth behind his intentions would soon be revealed in a way she could never have imagined. Samson began to recognize the potential of his actions. He told himself he wasn't just deceiving people. He was playing the game life had forced him into. Over time, his methods became more refined. He learned to identify his targets, women who were lonely, craving companionship, and often older and financially stable. He understood their vulnerabilities, knowing exactly how to exploit them. It wasn't just about the money, it was about trust. Trust was the key to everything. Samson approached each new relationship like a carefully laid plan. It started with compliments and shared interests. He would study their profiles and online posts, paying attention to the details that mattered most to them. Once he had their attention, he would deepen the emotional connection, escalating it with late-night calls where he spoke about his dreams, struggles, and small moments of vulnerability, making them believe they were his safe space. With Ellen, he took a step further. He didn't just shower her with compliments. He made her feel indispensable. "You're my favorite part of the day," he told her during one of their nightly chats. "You make me want to be a better man." For Ellen, who had spent so many years feeling invisible, these words were intoxicating. She started to look forward to their conversations, to the way Samson made her feel like the center of his world. As their emotional bond deepened, Samson began to test the waters with small requests. It began with mentioning his financial struggles, never asking for help directly, but leaving the door open for Ellen to offer. "I hate to even talk about money," he said one night, "but this month's rent is tighter than usual. It's just embarrassing." Ellen, empathetic and generous by nature, didn't hesitate to send him money. To her, it wasn't about the amount. It was about helping someone she cared about. Each transaction strengthened Samson's hold on her. He would always follow up with gratitude and reassurances of his love. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he would say. "You're the only one who believes in me." Ellen felt needed, valued, and in love. What she didn't realize was that Samson had played this game before. She was simply his latest mark. The small favors soon became more frequent, just a little money for bills, a loan for car repairs. Each time, Samson expressed his gratitude and assured Ellen he would pay her back once his situation improved. Ellen didn't mind. She saw it as an investment in their relationship, a way to show Samson that she believed in him. But soon, the amounts grew larger. Samson mentioned needing funds to secure a lease for his business or to cover unexpected medical expenses. Ellen, blinded by affection and trust, didn't see the pattern. She withdrew money from her savings, convincing herself that she was helping someone she loved. Her daughter, Samantha, started to notice the changes in her mother. Ellen had become more secretive, often retreating to her room for private phone calls or seeming distracted during their conversations. Samantha's suspicions grew when Ellen casually mentioned wiring money to a friend she had met online. Alarmed, Samantha tried to intervene, reminding her mother of a close call with a scam years ago. But Ellen brushed off her concerns, unwilling to let Samantha ruin what she believed was a genuine connection. This time, Ellen kept Samson a secret. She was convinced that Samantha wouldn't understand and that her daughter's disapproval would drive Samson away. She clung to the belief that what she had with Samson was real, even as her savings dwindled and Samantha became increasingly distant. Ellen's trust in Samson led her down a path she never could have imagined. What began as a hopeful search for companionship soon spiraled into a nightmare of betrayal, loss, and irreversible consequences. For now, though, Ellen held on to her dream, unaware of the storm that was quietly gathering just beyond her view. The connection between Ellen and Samson had reached a point where mere words on a screen were no longer enough for her. Ellen's nightly conversations with Samson had become the highlight of her days. With each exchange, she felt she was uncovering more about him, his dreams, his struggles, and even his heart. She felt like she truly knew him, and the emotional connection between them grew stronger with every message. Yet, despite the closeness they shared, a lingering distance remained. Ellen longed to bridge that gap, to transform their online romance into something real and tangible. At first, the thought of meeting him in person was just a quiet wish, a fantasy she entertained but never voiced aloud. However, as her feelings for Samson deepened, so did her determination. She began hinting at the idea during their conversations, testing the waters. "It will be wonderful to finally meet you," she said, her voice filled with hope. Samson, however, was more cautious. He responded with vague excuses about his schedule and financial situation. For Ellen, these hesitations only fueled her resolve. She wasn't going to let doubts or practicalities get in the way of what she believed was a chance at real happiness. Samson had made her feel alive again, and she wasn't about to let that slip away. Secretly, Ellen began planning the trip. She researched flights and accommodations, imagining the moment when they would finally meet face to face. But as her determination grew, Samson's reluctance became more pronounced. Samson Allen was no stranger to delicate situations, but Ellen's insistence caught him off guard. He had always been the one in control of their dynamic, carefully steering their relationship toward his ultimate goal, financial gain. Meeting in person had never been part of his plan. For him, the relationship existed solely as a means to an end, a game where trust and affection were tools to manipulate Ellen and achieve his objective. Ellen's push to meet him was now threatening to unravel everything he had worked for. At first, Samson tried to deflect her requests, brushing them off with excuses. "I'd love to meet you," he said, his tone warm but firm, "but things are just so hectic right now. I don't want you to go out of your way for me." Ellen wasn't deterred. Her responses grew more persistent, her excitement unwavering. "You've done so much for me," she told him. "This is my turn to show you how much I care." As the pressure mounted, Samson realized that outright refusal could raise suspicions. The last thing he wanted was to lose her trust or jeopardize the steady stream of money she had been sending him. He needed to stay ahead of her. After weeks of stalling, he reluctantly agreed. "All right," he said, his voice carrying a hint of resignation. "If this is what you really want, I'd be happy to see you." For Ellen, those words were everything she had hoped for. She quickly began finalizing her plans, her excitement growing with every passing day. But for Samson, Ellen's decision to visit was an unwelcome complication, one he would have to turn to his advantage. Her insistence had forced him into a corner. He knew she wouldn't take no for an answer, and her persistence left him with little choice but to accommodate her. But accommodating her didn't mean he intended to honor her trust. Samson knew that if Ellen was coming, he needed to ensure she left with nothing. He reached out to his circle of friends, young men who were just as familiar with scams as he was. Together, they devised a simple but effective plan to exploit Ellen's visit. Samson would welcome her warmly, gain her trust, and make sure she felt comfortable. Then, under the guise of helping her settle in, he and his friends would steal everything she brought with her, her luggage, her valuables, and any cash she had on hand. But the plan didn't stop there. Samson's ultimate goal was to empty Ellen's accounts. He would use the trust he had spent months building to convince her to transfer large sums of money under false pretenses. If she resisted, they were prepared to escalate the situation, threats, intimidation, whatever it took to get what they wanted. To them, Ellen wasn't a person. She was an opportunity. Meanwhile, Ellen remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the other side of her screen. To her, this trip was a testament to their love, a leap of faith that she was willing to take. She believed that meeting Samson in person would only strengthen their connection, never suspecting that the man she had come to trust was playing a dangerous game of his own. Little did she know, Her dream of a new beginning was quickly spiraling into a nightmare. Samson, the charming young man who had once made her feel special, was now plotting to take everything she had. Ellen's excitement was palpable as the day she had been waiting for finally arrived. She stood in her bedroom, carefully packing her suitcase with thoughtfulness and care. Each item she chose had significance, from her favorite dress, the one Samson had complimented when she described it to him, to the new pair of shoes she had bought just for the occasion. She even wrapped a small gift, eager to see his face light up when he opened it. This trip wasn't just a visit. It was the beginning of the new chapter she had dreamed of for so long. For weeks, Ellen had envisioned what it would feel like to meet Samson for the first time. She imagined the warmth of his hand in hers, the sound of his laughter filling the room, and the quiet mornings they'd share together. Her heart raced with anticipation as she closed her suitcase, heading out to the airport. She didn't tell Samantha, her daughter, where she was going. Samantha had always been skeptical of Ellen's online relationships, and Ellen knew her daughter would try to stop her. She wasn't willing to let Samantha's doubts take away her chance at happiness. As Ellen sat on the plane, watching the clouds drift by, her mind wandered to the life she envisioned with Samson. She clung to those images: quiet walks, shared meals, and laughter, allowing them to push aside the occasional doubts that crept in her thoughts. She had waited so long for this moment, and nothing was going to stand in the way of her happiness. This was her leap of faith, and she was determined to make it everything she had imagined. Meanwhile, across town, Samson Allen was operating on an entirely different wavelength. As Ellen's flight took off, Samson paced back and forth in his small apartment, going over the plan with his friends one last time. For Samson, Ellen's visit wasn't about love or connection. It was about opportunity. He didn't see her as a woman seeking companionship. To him, she was a target. The plan was simple, and it had been carefully crafted. Samson would charm Ellen, make her feel welcome, and ensure she trusted him completely. Meanwhile, his accomplices would play their roles in the background, waiting for the moment to strike. They had rehearsed every detail of the plan, from the excuses to the actions they would take when the time was right. Samson had always been good at manipulation, and Ellen's trust would be no different. He knew how to make her feel special, how to make her feel like the most important person in the world. He played on her emotions, drawing her in with sweet words and promises of a bright future. But behind the charm, Samson was calculating. He saw this as a way to get what he needed, and Ellen's affection and generosity were the keys to it all. Ellen, on the other hand, was blind to the truth. She believed in the connection she had with Samson, seeing him as the man who had made her feel alive again. Her heart was full of hope, her mind consumed with thoughts of what their future might look like. She was ready to take that next step, convinced that Samson was the real deal. The idea of meeting him in person felt like the natural next step in their relationship, one that would solidify everything they had shared over the months of their online chats. But as the plane touched down, the line between trust and betrayal began to blur. Ellen's excitement was still evident as she made her way to meet Samson, but what she didn't realize was that Samson had already set the wheels of his plan in motion. Samson had been playing this game for far too long to be caught off guard by Ellen's enthusiasm. He knew how to play the part of the charming, loving man, and he had no intention of letting her discover the truth. His ultimate goal was to exploit her trust, to use her affections to secure financial gain. As Ellen approached, he greeted her warmly, making sure she felt comfortable and safe. He would do whatever it took to make her feel like their connection was real, because once he had her trust, the rest would fall into place. What Ellen didn't know was that she was walking straight into a trap. The emotional bond she believed they shared was the foundation of a scheme that would drain her, both financially and emotionally. Samson's plan had been carefully crafted, and Ellen was just another mark in his elaborate game. For Ellen, the dream of meeting Samson was the beginning of a new life, one filled with love and connection. But for Samson, it was all about the money. He had no interest in love, only in what he could gain from it. And as the days passed, Ellen's world would begin to unravel, piece by piece, in ways she never could have imagined. Her excitement, Her hopes and her dreams were all about to collide with the cold reality of Samson's intentions. Would she be able to see through his deception before it was too late? Or would she fall victim to the very thing she had been searching for, a connection that turned out to be nothing more than a lie? Samson's plan was in full swing, a well-rehearsed scheme to drain Ellen of everything she had, her money, her possessions, and her will to resist. He had already mapped out every move, from the moment she landed to the exact timing of their visit to his apartment. When it was over, she would be left with nothing, unable to fight back or even escape the situation. Despite the calculated nature of his scheme, a sense of unease began to grow in Samson's chest. Ellen's sincerity, her kindness, and her trust in him unsettled him in a way he hadn't expected. She wasn't like the other women he had scammed. She was different, thoughtful, genuine, and completely open. For just a moment, he considered walking away from it all, but the thought of the money she had promised kept him focused. This was his chance, and he wasn't about to let his fleeting guilt ruin it. When Ellen landed in Mississippi, her heart was racing with excitement and anticipation. She stepped off the plane into the warm, southern air, her eyes scanning the crowd, looking for Samson. As soon as she saw him standing there, his smile as bright as she had imagined, her heart leapt in her chest. He embraced her tightly, whispering in her ear, "You look even more beautiful than I imagined." For Ellen, the moment was perfect. Samson's warmth and charm reassured her, wiping away any lingering doubts. She felt certain that she had made the right choice by coming. He helped her with her luggage, holding her hand as they walked to his car, their connection seeming effortless. The drive to his apartment was filled with laughter and light conversation, and Ellen couldn't help but marvel at how natural everything felt between them. But behind Samson's friendly exterior, his mind was racing. The clock was ticking, and he knew he had to act fast. Once they arrived at his apartment, he poured her a glass of wine and made her feel at home. They spent the evening talking, with Samson showering her with compliments and promises of a future together. For Ellen, it was everything she had hoped for. The next morning, however, things began to shift. Samson introduced Ellen to his two friends, young men who claimed to live in the building. They were polite, but there was an edge to their demeanor that Ellen couldn't quite place. Still, she dismissed her unease, trusting Samson to protect her. As the day went on, Samson started making simple requests. He told Ellen that his landlord was demanding payment and that he needed her help to avoid eviction. "I hate to ask," he said, his voice filled with apparent shame, "but you're the only person I can trust." Ellen, eager to support him, didn't hesitate. She transferred the money without a second thought, believing she was helping the man she loved. But the request didn't stop there. Over the next 2 days, Samson's demeanor grew more desperate. He spoke of mounting bills, unexpected emergencies, and opportunities that required immediate cash. Each time, Ellen complied, convinced that her support was strengthening their bond. What she didn't realize was that Samson's friends were watching her every move, biding their time, waiting for the moment to strike. On the third day of her visit, everything fell apart. Samson's friends burst into the apartment while Ellen was alone, claiming they were there to help Samson with his troubles. Their presence quickly turned menacing as they began rifling through her belongings, taking her jewelry, her cash, and even her phone. Ellen froze in terror, unable to comprehend what was happening. When Samson returned, she pleaded with him for an explanation. His warm demeanor was gone, replaced by cold indifference. He demanded that she transfer the remainder of her savings. "You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his eyes devoid of the affection she had come to trust. Ellen was shattered. The man she had traveled so far to see, the man she had trusted with her heart and her future, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Tears streamed down her face as she complied, transferring the last of her money to his account. She was broken, the weight of the betrayal sinking in. Samson, the man she had believed in, had taken everything from her, and there was nothing she could do to change it. Her heart ached with the realization that the love she had imagined, the connection she thought was real, had been nothing more than a carefully orchestrated lie. Samson had used her trust as a tool, manipulating her into giving him everything he wanted. Ellen's hope had led her into the arms of a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. The dream of a new beginning, of a love she had so desperately craved, had been shattered in the most devastating way. As Ellen sat there, defeated, she realized the depth of her mistake. She had trusted someone who was never worthy of her trust. She had given everything to a man who had taken it all without hesitation, leaving her with nothing but a broken heart and an empty future. She refused to listen to her daughter's cries of pain and regret as they were about to leave. Ellen's heart raced with a mixture of anger and heartbreak, her voice trembling as she shouted at the man she thought she loved. But Samson, panicking at her resistance, reacted violently. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. In a moment of chaos, he grabbed a knife. The brutal act of violence ended Ellen's life in an instant, her blood staining the apartment floor as she collapsed. Samson and his associates fled, leaving Ellen to die alone in the place that had once felt like a new beginning. Ellen's journey, which had started with hope and excitement, ended in betrayal and heartbreak. The woman who had sought love and connection now found herself at the mercy of a man who saw her not as a partner, but as an opportunity. The cost of her trust was far greater than she could have ever imagined, and the consequences of her decision would haunt those left behind. The phone call came in the early hours of the morning, just as Samantha Matthews was preparing for her usual workday. The ringtone broke the silence of her apartment, its urgency jolting her out of her half-awake haze. Samantha glanced at the unfamiliar number on the screen and hesitated before answering. "Is this Samantha Matthews?" The voice on the other end was calm but formal. "Yes," Samantha replied cautiously. "This is Officer Daniels with the Jackson Police Department. I'm sorry to inform you that your mother, Ellen Matthews, has passed away." The words hit her like a wave, freezing her in place. Her mind raced, unable to process what she had just heard. "What do you mean?" Samantha asked, her voice faltering. "She was fine, she was—" Officer Daniels continued, his voice steady as he explained the details. Ellen had been found in an apartment in Jackson, the victim of a violent crime. As the officer mentioned the words homicide investigation, Samantha's heart sank. She collapsed into a chair, struggling to catch her breath. Her mother, the woman who had loved her so fiercely, was gone. But not just gone, taken in the most brutal, senseless way. Guilt surged through Samantha as she thought back on the past few months. She had seen the changes in her mother's behavior, the secrecy surrounding her phone calls, the strange mentions of sending money to someone she couldn't name. Samantha had warned her mother about online scams, urging her to be cautious, but Ellen had always brushed off her concerns. "I can take care of myself," Ellen would say. "I should have done more," Samantha whispered through her tears, her mind replaying every moment, every conversation, every chance she had to intervene. The regret was suffocating. Had she been more persistent? Could she have stopped this from happening? The weight of her unanswered questions would linger with her forever. The investigation into Ellen's death began immediately, with officers piecing together the events leading to her tragic end. The crime scene was a small, run-down apartment in Jackson, sparsely furnished, eerily quiet, and stained with the remnants of violence. Blood splattered the floor where Ellen had fallen, her scattered belongings telling the story of the chaos and betrayal that had unfolded. Detectives noted the signs of a violent struggle: overturned furniture, a shattered wine glass, and a suitcase with its contents thrown across the room. Ellen's wallet, phone, and other valuables were missing, suggesting robbery as the likely motive. But it was the knife left on the kitchen counter that revealed the true horror of what had happened. As detectives continued their work, they uncovered crucial clues. A neighbor had reported hearing raised voices the night before, followed by a loud thud and then silence. Another witness described seeing 3 young men leaving the apartment quickly, though their descriptions were vague. It was clear that Ellen hadn't been alone when she died. Whoever had been with her had fled in a hurry, taking her life and possessions with them. Later that day, Samantha arrived at the police station, her heart heavy with the weight of the news she had received. Her mind was still reeling from the shock, but she knew she had to face the reality of her mother's death. She had to find answers. What had happened to Ellen? Who had betrayed her? And why? As she sat in the police station, Samantha struggled to make sense of the horror that had unfolded. Her mother, the woman who had trusted someone she thought was worthy of her love, had been betrayed in the worst way. And now, Samantha was left to pick up the pieces of a life shattered by a brutal act of violence. The network of deceit had been dismantled, and although justice had been delayed, it was finally beginning its course. The trial of Samson Allen and his accomplices moved quickly, each detail of their scheme revealing the depth of cruelty behind Ellen Matthews' tragic death. The prosecution presented irrefutable evidence, chat logs, bank transfers, and witness testimonies that highlighted the systematic manipulation and eventual betrayal Ellen had faced. Samantha's emotional testimony silenced the courtroom. Her words were a poignant reminder of the human cost behind the crime, a mother's trust that had been exploited with devastating consequences. The defense tried to argue that Ellen's death was an accident, portraying Samson as desperate and overwhelmed. But the prosecution swiftly dismantled these claims, exposing the premeditated nature of the scam and the violent act that had silenced Ellen forever. The jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict. Samson Allen was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and his accomplices received lengthy sentences for their roles in the crime. The resolution of the case brought a sense of closure for Samantha, though the pain of her loss remained. It also served as a stark warning about the dangers of online manipulation and the exploitation of vulnerable individuals. For Samantha Matthews, life after her mother's death became a journey of grief and reflection. Coping with the loss wasn't just about mourning Ellen. It was about reconciling the trust and love that had led her mother into danger. Samantha struggled with guilt, often questioning if she could have done more to prevent the tragedy. But in time, her pain became a driving force, fueling her determination to honor her mother's memory by raising awareness about the dangers of online scams. This tragedy reshaped Samantha's understanding of love and trust. She began advocating for open communication within families, emphasizing the importance of staying connected and vigilant, especially when it comes to vulnerable loved ones. What makes people fall for such scams despite repeated warnings? Could this tragedy have been prevented if families communicated more openly with each other? Ellen's story underscores the importance of vigilance in online relationships. It serves as a powerful reminder that even the most independent and strong-willed individuals can fall victim to manipulation when they seek connection. The lesson is clear. Families must maintain open, judgment-free communication, staying supportive and attentive to protect one another from harm. Ellen Matthews sought love in a world increasingly connected by screens, but her trust was betrayed in the most devastating way. Her story serves as a poignant reminder of the risks inherent in the digital age, where love and trust must be tempered with caution. We encourage you to share this video with your loved ones. Let Ellen's story be a beacon of awareness and a call for vigilance. If you found this story impactful, please subscribe to our channel to stay informed and help spread awareness. Together, we can create a safer, more connected world.